Today we're going to be making this animation of a top plays countdown. In part 1, we're going to do all the modeling and the animating, and then in part 2, we're going to add in our materials and render it out with cycles. I'm also going to put up an optional part 2 where you can take what we just did and render it out in Eevee. Okay, let's get started. Alright, before we open up Blender, let's just go ahead and get this wood texture that we're going to need. So if you follow the link in the description, you'll be taken to my website, and right here you'll see wood texture from Polygon. If you click on that link, here's the wood texture we're going to use in this project, and you can just click free download. I would go ahead and move this folder into whatever folder that you're going to be working on this Blender project in. And by the way, Polygon's got a great site that's got tons of different textures, so feel free to check that out. But we're just going to use this free one so we can get going on this project. And also, if you're interested, on my website, I do have the completed files for this project. So I have both the Cycles version and the Eevee here, and you can download them if you like. But alright, we're ready to open up Blender and get going. Okay, I'm just going to click off the splash screen. I'm going to click A once to deselect that cube, A to select everything. I'm going to hit X for delete, and enter to delete everything. Now we're going to want to make that first panel. I'm going to hit Shift A. We're going to go to Mesh, and we're going to select Cylinder. When you add a shape in like this, you'll have settings that pop up on the bottom left, and these won't be here later, so let's make use of them now. I'm going to make the vertices 64, change the radius to 36, and the depth to 25. And right here for the cap fill, I'm going to put nothing because we don't want it to have a top and bottom. Just going to zoom out here and see what we're working with, and I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. Everything's already selected for me, so right now I'm going to hit E, which is going to make an extrusion, but we're actually going to hit S immediately, and we could just eyeball this, but I'm going to put in 0.9 and hit enter. Okay, so now we've got the base of this cylinder going, and at the beginning of it, I'm going to hit 7 to go into number pad, and I'm going to hit Z to go into our wireframe view, A to deselect. Oh, and it looks like I'm in top perspective view. If you are too, you can see in the top left here, it says top perspective. I'm going to hit 5 on my numpad to get to the orthographic view. I'm going to hit B, and this allows you to draw a box to make a selection. So we're going to select all those faces. I'm going to hit X and click on vertices right here. So now if you move around, hit Z to get out of wireframe mode, you'll see we've got the beginning of this panel here. I'm going to zoom in closer, right click on this first one, shift and right click these other 3 vertices. So we have 4 vertices here, and we're just going to hit F. That will close out and make that face between those vertices. I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to right click on this one, shift right click, and hit F. Alright, and we could leave our panel like this. It's kind of a style choice, but I'm actually going to, if you look here, there's a slant to the panel, and so I don't want to change this. So I'm going to hit 1 to go in the front view, A to deselect, Z just to go into wireframe. We're going to do that B box select again, and this time I'm just going to make these all be the same height. So I'm going to hit S for scale, Z to keep it on the Z axis, and 0, and that's just going to flatten those out. I'm going to hit A to deselect those, B to draw my box, grab the bottom vertices, and I'm going to hit scale, that's S, Z for the Z axis, and 0. And now I'm going to hit A to deselect, Z to get out of wireframe, and you can see we've got the basis of this first panel here. I'm going to hit Tab to leave edit mode, and we're in object mode. On this left panel, I'm going to select smooth shading. That way we're going to have the smooth shading, but I want to have those sharp edges back. So if you click the wrench on your right panel, add modifier, and go to edge split, this is going to bring back our hard edges. I'm going to hit 1 to go into front view. Shift D is going to duplicate. I'm going to hit Z to keep the movement on the Z axis. I'm going to put it right there. Shift D again. Hit Z to keep it on the Z axis again, and try to make that even compared to the top. Alright, so now you can see we've got our 3 panels. Okay, now I'm just going to right click to select this top panel. I'm going to hit 7 to go into our top view, and we're going to start working on the smaller little, I don't know what to call them, but the little strips that are going to move around. So I'm going to hit Shift D and then S immediately, and I'm just going to drag it until there's a bit of a space in between the larger one and the smaller. I'm going to left click to lock that in. That's pretty good. If you want a little more space, you could hit S and bring it a little more. I think I'm happy with it though. Alright, so now it fits in there, but it needs to be a lot skinnier. So I'm going to hit S for scale again, Z to keep it on the Z axis, and I'm just going to bring that to about so. Left click to keep it. So now it's just a matter of positioning these. Actually, first off, we don't want these to be the full length of this half of the cylinder, so I'm actually going to go 7 to go in our top view, tab in edit mode, Z to go in the wireframe mode, B, and that's going to let us draw our box selection. Select these vertices, X for delete, and I'm just going to click on vertices right there. And again, as it did earlier, if I hit Z to go out of wireframe, we'd have a hole right here from where we cut it. So right click and then shift right click and F to create that face, tab out of there. Alright, so now we have our first little stripe. I'm going to go into the front view, and I'm not going to position these exactly, but I know I want about 2 in each panel. I'm going to hit Shift D, Z to keep it on the Z, Shift D, Z, left click, Shift D, Z, bring it down, Shift D, Z. And really, you could have more or less of these. The exact positioning is going to end up being up to you. But I liked how it looks for me, having about 2 in each section. And when we actually get the number in here, we can play with the exact placement. Okay, so now we want to add in the number. So I'm going to hit Shift A, go to text right here. It's going to be pretty small, so we're going to have to zoom in. Alright, hit Tab. That goes into this edit mode for text. If you just backspace a few times, put in the number 5, hit Tab, and so we've got our 5 there. We want it to be standing upright, so I'm going to hit R for rotate, X to keep it on the X axis, and 90. That's going to be make it stand upright. I'm going to go 1 to go into our front view. I'm going to zoom out because we're going to make this a lot bigger now. And in the right panel, if you have the 5 selected, you'll see there's this F now. This is your text settings. I'm going to go down to where it says size. I'm going to put in 33, hit enter. I'm going to hit G, and that's a move tool. I'm going to bring it about in the center here. Left click to lock that in. Alright, so now I want to give it an extrusion of 0.5. You'll see that gave it some depth there. Well, I guess it's technically the extrusion. And for how our look is going to be built, I'm actually going to hit Shift D and enter to put another 5 directly on top of this one. This one, I'm going to add a depth to it. We're going to make the depth 1. And that's the bevel. So you can see here, if I drag it, you can see how that's changing. I like it at 1 though. Alright, so now we have 2 directly on top of each other. I'm going to right click, and I've got the first one selected here now. It's kind of hard to tell, but I'm actually going to take this extrusion and I'm going to make it larger. So this is just going to make the first 5 kind of stick out. If you see here, it's going to stick out from the other 5 and just going to make it a little more visually interesting. The exact amount can be up to you. I just want it sticking out a decent amount, and that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so now we're going to work on actually animating the scene. So to get this number to animate, I'm actually going to add an empty. We're going to animate that and have it move the 5 for us. So I'm going to hit Shift A, go down to empty, and I'm going to use plain axis. Hit S. I'm just going to scale this up very large. Okay. And since we haven't moved anything around the scene, that's going to be right in the middle. So I'm going to right click on that first 5. I'm going to hit Shift right click to get the second 5. And I'm going to lastly Shift right click on this empty we just made. And it's important to do it doing that one last. Hold Control, hit P, and we're going to hit Object. Click right there. So I'm going to hit A to deselect. I'm going to right click on just this empty. I'm going to hit R and Z, and that's just to show you that now when I move this empty, it also moves the 5. So I'm going to hit escape on that, zoom out, and we're going to start thinking about how we want this to look in the end. I'm going to hit N to bring up my right panel here. I'm going to make sure I'm at frame 1. I am right here. The total length of this is only going to be 96 seconds, so in my furthest right panel, I'm going to go over and change the end frame from 250 to 96. Okay, you can see our timeline got shorter here. And so I want to have this 5 kind of be facing the camera, and if you noticed in the video, the camera's going to start kind of at the top left over here. So if we go over into our right panel and pull over this Z, we can start changing the rotation. So I'm actually going to go with -400. And if you hover over this rotation box and hit I, that will add a keyframe right there. So we've got that locked in. Now I'm going to go to the end down here. This will jump to our last frame. You can see we're on frame 96. And I'm just going to change this to 0, hit enter, and hit I. So that way when the camera moves in at the very end, we're going to be looking right directly at the 5. So just to show you that this is working properly, I'll hit play, and you can see we have our 5 start spinning around and then comes into a resting position right there. So now let's start positioning these other little stripes here. I actually think that I'm going to change what I had here a little bit. I'm going to right click on this one, hit X to delete. I think I only had 5 in the original version, so I'm going to keep it a little closer to that original version. And I also had 3 of them in here, so I'm just right clicking on them, and if you left click on this blue axis, it will keep it on the Z. So I'm going to put 3 of them in this middle section, maybe space them out a little better. You can also hit G and Z, right click, G and Z. I think I'm going to like that a little better. Right click on this one, GZ, and because our final shot's going to be pretty cropped to that 5, so if we have some stripes way below or way high, we're not really going to see them. So I'm just going to move them a little closer into the shot. Okay, so I've got those where I want them. Now we actually have to work on their placement. So if you go back to the timeline, I'm going to hit that to jump back to frame 1. This one, I'm happy where it is. The second one, I'm going to hit RZ, and I'm just going to rotate that around to be about so. Okay, right click on this one. I'm going to hit so, and also I want to keep in mind these all are going to be moving different directions. So this one is going to rotate around to the right clockwise. This one's going to go counterclockwise. This one's going to go clockwise. So you don't need to be thinking about that too much right now, but I'm just going to remember that. So this one I'm going to have kind of be in front of the 5 to start. So that one went around clockwise. And really, we can always change this later. Maybe put this one here. And maybe I'll just move this one a little bit. Okay, so we've got these all in different places. And we can actually go ahead and just do our initial keyframe. So I'm going to select this one. I'm going to hit I there. Select this one, I. I'm just going to go through selecting them, I over the rotation, so we can lock that in. Okay, and then I'm going to hit down here in the timeline. I'm going to jump to our last frame. Alright, so now I'm actually going to jump and hit 1 on the numpad to get into my front view, get a little bit closer to how it will look when the camera is pretty much straight on here. So we've got our initial keyframe set. Now we need our final keyframe. So I'm got the top one selected. I'm going to hit R and Z, and I'm just going to spin this around so that it moves clockwise, which actually is a negative rotation for it. And I'm going to bring it to about here. You also could just do it in this panel over here, and I'm going to hit I. So let's see if we like that. So I'm going to hit play. It's spinning around, so it does 1 full rotation plus a little bit more, and I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to pause that, jump back to the end, right click on this second one. Okay, so this one should be going the opposite direction. So this time I'm just dragging from that right panel. This one I want to have go right up to the edge. Let's see, maybe like here. Hit I. And I'm just going to, again, just make sure it's doing the right thing. They're going opposite directions. Okay, that looks good. Jump back to the end. Let's see, this third one needs to go around the 5 this direction. I think I'm going to have this one go a little bit faster. This might end up being a bad idea, but we'll see. I'm going to bring it around, have it go, let's see, like here. Let's hit play though, and that might be moving just way faster than the other ones, and you know, actually, I'm fine with that. I like how it looks. So I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, jump back to the last frame. Right click on this one. Alright, actually, let's figure out what direction does this one need to go. So that one's going around the 5 that way. Alright, so this one needs to go that direction. This one I'm also going to have go a little faster. Maybe I'll make it all the way to over here. You know, and this really, you don't have to do it exactly the same as I'm doing. You may have them go only a half spin. You may have them spin 3 times. You know, it's really going to be up to you. Let's see. Yep. Let's hit play. Okay. Looking pretty good. Jump back to the last frame. And actually, I can always forget. Let's see. Okay. So this last one, I'm going to right click. And it's going to need to go around the 5 this way. And I'm going to take it. Oh, how much did I jump there? Let's see. I think that's probably going to be pretty good. Alright, hit start. Alright, that's looking pretty good. I'm actually just going to zoom out and move around. Just kind of see it at this angle. See if I like how that looks. And jump back in my front view. See how it looks. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. Alright, now we're going to add the camera in. Hit Shift A, and from the list click on Camera. It's hidden behind this 5 right now. If you left click and drag, you can bring it out from behind the 5. I'm going to hit S to scale it up so we can see what we're doing, what we're cropping a little bit better. And actually, before I forget, I'm going to jump to the last frame, so frame 96. We know the final pose is going to be straight on, so I'm just going to take care of that now. So if I hit N, that's going to get rid of the right panel. I'm going to hit T to get rid of the left, so we have more space to see. I'm going to click and drag from here, and that just gives us 2 views. From the left view, I'm going to hit 0, which lets us see what the camera sees. And then this right view, I'm going to use this to left click and drag on the green arrow and just pull it to where you like your composition. So I'm happy with it there. I'm going to hit N to bring up this right panel, and I'm going to hit I on the rotation. We haven't rotated it yet, but we will be in the first frame, so let's lock that in there, and let's lock in this location by hitting I. Alright, so we've got our final shot composition done, so let's use a timeline to jump to the first frame, and I'm going to have the camera be kind of on the top left and then swoop in. So I'm going to hit 7 to go into our top view. I'm going to hit G to move it, and actually maybe I'll hit X also just to keep it on the X axis for now. And then actually I'm going to move it in a bit. Actually, maybe back a bit. I kind of want to swoop towards the 5, so maybe I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to hit R to rotate, get it back to where it's looking right at the 5. And if you're seeing in the viewport here where you're not seeing the whole background, look in this farthest right panel, there's the little movie icon, camera icon, and just click on this clipping and bring this up to 300. Okay, so we've got it moved at the top orthographic view. Let's hit 1 to go to the front, and we're also going to pull it up on the Z-axis to go upwards. Let's go pretty high, maybe about here. And then the rotation over here, I'm going to rotate on the X, and I'm just going to pull it down maybe about so. Maybe I'll turn it on the Z a little bit, maybe about here. This is a little bit of preference. You can play around with this. You can, have exact settings that you'd like. But I'm going to do this. Hit I on the rotation, I on the location, and we should be good to go with our keyframes there. So I'm going to click and drag from here just to close that out. And now if I hit play, we should see our animation. And it looks pretty good. It could be a little more dynamic, could be a little more interesting. So maybe I'm going to pause it, and maybe about here I'm going to add in some extra rotation on this camera just to make it have a little extra movement. So I'm going to hit N to bring up this right panel again, and I'm going to move the X, make it point down for a moment as it moves in, and maybe even give it a little tilt just to make the camera be a little less static. And let's see about the Z. I feel like I like the Z pretty good. So I'm going to hit I on that keyframe there, and let's see if we like this. So I'm going to hit back to the first frame right there. I'm going to hit play. Alright, that's a little more interesting, a little bit more dynamic. The camera kind of swoops in a little bit more and has some more movement. I don't like how it gets too close to the top here, so I'm going to pause it. If you just click and drag in here and hold shift, I'll lock back in here, but I had mine at 50, so go back to wherever you made that keyframe. And in my case, I was a little close to where that top, the 5 was in the top, so I'm going to change this a little bit back, just a little bit. It was safe, but I want a little more space, so I'm going to make sure that's locked in, go back to the first frame, hit play, and let's see how that looks. Yeah, so that, doesn't get too close to the top, but we're still getting a little bit more of a dynamic, interesting camera move than we had before. So I'm happy with how it looks right here, and so I'm going to pause it, and all we have left is to give it materials and render it.